It's been kind of a crazy few weeks recently. Yeah, and I've honestly not got very much composition done until the last few days, where there's been this absolute flurry of activity, some of which happened this morning, which I'm going to tell you about. Yeah, I mean, there was Christmas, I had a week and a half's worth of flu, I've had a couple of weeks trying to get my energy levels back after the flu. I had a nice little chunk of paying work, which was enjoyable but time-consuming, and I've been trying to sort of pull together a conference presentation that I'm giving in Ghent in a couple of weeks, but which I have to have finished by the end of next week, because after the end of next week, everything collapses again and goes insane. Yeah, so it's been busy, and I was hoping to be able to tell you some more stuff about Impedimenta, because Jenny and I were supposed to go and have a residency in a barn in Norfolk, which was going to be delightful, except my brain was about to implode and I had to pull out of that, which I felt very bad about, but I think might be for the best, because we've had some really good discussions since, and I think we're in a better place to start now than we were before. So we've got sessions set up for February now, where we're going to start doing some actual practical stuff on that piece. Zubin's piece I've got a workshop for the week after next, and I hadn't done anything on it at all, and this morning I thought, no, I need to do something, and I know I need to write notes for this. And the place where I usually start when I do have to write notes is by creating a cipher. Now, I had been thinking about a title for this one, and so far it seems to be Slide, just based on the idea that he's sliding under the piano. It might turn into something else, but that's kind of what it feels like for now. Yeah, but I had this terrible brain moment a couple of days ago, and I was thinking, he goes under the piano. He's Australian. You're Australian. You could call it Down Under. And I said, brain, shut up, you're stupid. And yes, I think it's a title that is just cringe-makingly appalling. But I thought it'd be quite cute to have that as the cipher, perhaps, and just see what that produced. And the answer is that what it produces is quite dull. But I think not impossible. It's a very limited palette of pictures that comes out of those particular words, because there's a lot of duplication, either exact duplication, you've got multiple Ds in there, or because you just end up with enharmonic pitches, which are basically the same, they're the same pitch written in different ways. So A sharp is B flat, they're the same pitch on a piano. So what it comes out as is D, E, B, B flat. And it is very limited because there's not many notes there. But it does also contain a really good range of intervals. You've got major and minor, seconds, sevenths, thirds and sixths in there, plus a perfect fifth and a tritone. So I think there's stuff that can be worked with, and I mean, because the bit that's going to be played on the keyboard isn't going to go on for very long, and I think given the nature of the sounds under the piano, things like hammering on the pedals, and if you're sort of tapping on the underneath, you've got areas of pitch, but it's very, you know, it's very limited. If you've got 3 areas up here, then you've got 3 pitches. And I think it's possibly quite good to start by thinking of restricted melodic material to start with. Because then the connections will be clearer between what he's playing on the keyboard and what he's playing underneath. And if I want to expand that palette, maybe that can happen with the EBow, or maybe that can be something that's explored further, or possibly he improvises around it at the keyboard. I'm not sure. But I'm quite happy with that, I think. I did test out Slide as a cipher, and that's really boring too. But it doesn't have the intervallic interest for me that this one does, and I feel it just feels really cramped and dull. So that's not happening. So Haydn Space Opera also has a workshop next week, and so this week I have to put in a big push and get that ready for us to be playing things. I've been doing a lot of thinking about this. I've been really stressing about it, actually. And I know it's silly because I just need to get on and do it. But I think I've been hampered a bit by the fact that I'm really rather fond of the improvisations. I think they're working really well. And to be honest, I'm a bit scared that whatever I make is not going to be as good. And so I've been procrastinating, as well as being just massively busy, which just gives you an excuse for further procrastination. But I've reached a point now where we've got workshop in a week. I need stuff. So this is good, because that'll make me actually get on and do it. And so I'd been sort of thinking about the elements of that, and I'm trying to sort of think about how they go together. And I had this thought. Sort of all these bits we've got, and how do they go together? Do they go together is a question, which I feel they kind of do, but sort of getting from one to another without it being clunky, without it feeling like a whole other thing, has proven a bit of a mental challenge. But I had this idea that actually there could be a nice point of transition between the layered spoken voices with the video. This is the video with the writing where the hand comes forward and we stop when the hand obliterates the view of the screen. And using for that the version where we were all speaking about our own work in progress very quietly. But incorporating those changes of volume and the cutouts, I think that could be really, really nice. And then partway through that, Ed and Josh start to drift off towards their instruments, and Tim and I sort of morph what we're saying, and the whole thing just sort of twists and becomes Phil de Barlow song. Yeah, I think that might work quite well. Having some ideas too about maybe projecting that video or a version of that video directly onto us. Maybe we'd be in a line at the front of the stage, but I don't know how that'll work. It won't work at all at Kettle's Yard, so it needs to be something that can be there but doesn't have to be there. So yeah, I'm going to play with that, see if I can get that happening in the workshop, but I think that's a good place to start. Yeah, I mean, gluing the bits together is, writing the bits is hard and huge blockage about doing it, but I think the really hard part is going to be making it feel a coherent thing and not just blocks of stuff. How do we transition from one to another where we don't already have a transition and the feel is quite different? Yeah, so I'm quite pleased with this as a starting point. It gives me something I feel I can hold on to that is something more than just those improvisations. It feels like the start of it being its own thing. So where I have the most to report though is on Turn, formerly known as Britain Variations. I had a workshop with Amy a couple of days ago that we were both a bit unprepared for, I think. But yeah, I spent a little bit of time at the Tape Modern before our session, just tinkering with the tape part. I'd been thinking about this, and there's this phrase that kept coming up, especially while I was in Australia and I was kind of having to go over and over the same ground. And this came up a few times, this idea of simultaneity, not synchronicity, that there are two things going on at the same time and sort of just drifting above each other in the same direction. And so I kind of feel that that's what the tape part is doing compared to what Amy's doing. And so I did some sort of guesstimates on how long sections would take and rejigged the structure of the piece to, I've got sort of patches where it's like over the course of this bit, that will fade out. Over the course of this bit, this will fade in. I got my timings absolutely wrong. Yes, that was very good. Her strumming is much, much faster than I anticipated, but that led to a really good discussion about tempi and notation and things like that, which was very, very productive and has given us a good point to move on from. And I fully accept that sort of as we go along and as this is rehearsed and Amy gets to know it all better, those timings will settle a lot more, and then once they have settled and it's nicely rehearsed, then I'll do a final tape part. So when I came back to the score, because I hadn't looked at that since November, when I was in France, and sort of looking at the last bit with the drumming on the tailpiece, and I extended that a bit with sort of arrows and letters, really. Yeah, to sort of put in some repetitions and stretch that out. And I was thinking about the drumming on the tailpiece, and I suddenly remembered that I made a recording of Rain while I was in Australia, completely failing to work. And that sound is very particular to my room in Australia where I was failing to work. And so it feels kind of like a part of the whole process of this piece, which has had these, large sections of failing to work in various places. And the sound of the rain drumming on the glass roof in that room is, it just sort of reminded me a bit of the sound of the drumming on the tailpiece that we're doing. Yeah. So I've incorporated that into the tape part. Yeah, I don't think I'm going to use any other Australian sounds from there, but that one I felt sort of worked somehow. So I'm quite pleased with that idea, and I'm yet to see where that's all going to go. So yeah, that's how that's developed. We made a lot of small refinements to tone, so things like deciding which string certain notes would be played on, and sort of how do we get sort of a slightly different tone on the same pitch by playing on a different string or using a different technique. How to get from one section to another, so from the strumming section goes into a series of quintuplets, which goes into a series of sextuplets, which goes back into quintuplets, and to get from the fives to the sixes is actually quite difficult because Amy pretty much has to go from way down on the cello to way up on the cello and switch from normal notes to harmonics at the same time, and it was always going to be a bit rough. So we've made a little adjustment there and put in an extra kind of punctuation mark, as it were. This is good. Sort of using the slap idea that we're bringing in later on, so bringing that in a morsel earlier to try and just keep momentum, because if we just made a pause, I felt the whole piece dropped and it lost that momentum into the next section. Yeah, so I'm quite pleased with where that's got to now. It's nice to be refining things and really feeling like, okay, this sort of beginning section is quite settled now, and I just need to sort of be assembling chunks in the later section and pushing it on towards completion. We've had a lot more discussion on the score as well. I've kind of accepted that the collage approach, while I like it and it's very helpful for me in creating the piece, I think it is going to have to go in the final version, which makes me very sad. But we're now working with things like changing the inversions of chords, and there's areas where the sort of remnant bits of the original are impeding the clarity of the notation and making it quite hard to read. Yeah, I'm still working out how to do that though, and I discovered yesterday that my version of Finale doesn't work with my operating system anymore, but the new version of Finale also doesn't work with my operating system. But the last time I tried to upgrade my operating system, everything ran so slowly that I had to downgrade again, so I may handwrite this, which does give me, of course, a bit of scope to try to find a way to make it feel a bit more like the collage version. Yeah, I've got to tinker with this and sort of work out how I'm going to do it, but yeah, in the meantime, Amy's going to be doing her version of the score, which will be, I will guarantee, more performer friendly, and that's going to be really useful for me. We've been having sort of discussions about co-composing. This came up in the collaboration conference we both went to in Antwerp at the beginning of December, where it came out that she is actually very interested in co-composing and being more assertive in the collaboration. And so I said I'd be open to that, and we're working with that a bit and sort of finding our way, but you know, I'm trying to suppress my inner control freak and bring hers out a bit more. So it's fun, and I think we're getting places. So I think we had some good discussions in the workshop about this, and sort of some proper negotiation happening, and there's a few changes in there that are very much her contribution, as was indeed turning the cello on its side and playing with the plectrum. So yeah, I think we're definitely heading towards a co-composed situation for this. So that's it for this time. Thank you very much for watching. As always, if you've got any comments or questions, please leave them below, and I'll see you in the next episode. Thanks. Bye.